So today we're going to be looking at our first real history content lesson. This is Unit 1, Subunit 1, Lesson 1. The first thing that we're doing in our first subunit of the first unit, we're going to be talking about the Dark Ages. Well, the kind of Dark Ages. So today's SWABAT, we're going to be tracing the events which led to the Dark Age of Europe. And it is important that we recognize and acknowledge that this is a Dark Age of Europe. The whole world is not experiencing the exact same problems that Europe is during this time. Now, the cause of these European problems dates all the way back to Roman times. This here is a map of the Roman Empire at its height, and you can see that it covers a very large area of what is today Europe, North Africa, and parts of Asia as well, basically surrounding the Mediterranean Sea right in here. So Roman Empire was very large. The Roman civilization was very advanced. It had a very centralized government, a very large population, and it was mostly peaceful. We tend to think of the Romans as being this warlike civilization. They certainly were. They fought a lot of wars. They were horrible neighbors to have. But within the confines of the empire itself, for most of their existence, it was a pretty peaceful place to live. You didn't have to live under this constant threat that a lot of the rest of the world was living under. Now, problems arise for Europe during the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. In the 4th and 5th centuries AD, the western half of the Roman Empire was repeatedly, continuously attacked by Germanic barbarians in particular, but others as well. These were people who lived in modern-day Germany and a little east of Germany that were trying to get access to the empire, and they would do so by invading. Now, by the 500 AD, the Western Roman Empire has collapsed, largely under the pressure of these invasions. There were other factors as well. I'm not saying it was just the barbarians. There are reasons why they can't resist the barbarians at this time. But it will be the barbarian invasions, these attacks that just knock the Romans right out. But this is just the western half. Throughout what used to be the western half of the Roman Empire, this area over here, we start to see the establishment of new kingdoms. We call these the Germanic kingdoms or the barbarian kingdoms, but these are going to become kind of modern nations as we get further along. This is a bigger map of this region, and we can see we've got the Visigothic kingdoms. These are one of the barbarians, the Ostrogoths, and the Franks right up through here, who we're going to be talking quite a bit about. Now you'll notice off to the right it still says Roman Empire. They did consider themselves very much Romans over here, even though they're no longer in control of the city of Rome. They don't control Rome, but they're very much considering themselves Romans. Now today, we mark the beginning of the Dark Ages with this final defeat of the Western Roman Empire. On the map on your left, we can see this division, which had existed within the Roman Empire for some time, into Western Roman and Eastern Roman, or Western Empire and Eastern Empire. The Eastern Empire is going to continue to exist. It's going to continue to exist for a very long time. They stick around, but we start to call them the Byzantine Empire. It's a complicated reason why we call them the Byzantines rather than the Romans, even when they called themselves Romans. But that's a topic for a different day. Today we're just mostly focusing on what used to be the Western Roman Empire, not the Byzantines. During this destruction, a lot of Romans' cities were destroyed. Many of the Romans were killed. We see a huge collapse in the Roman population, fewer people being able to live in these cities, and it's just not a good time. Now, the Dark Ages begin here, but it's important for us to define this. The definition of the Dark Age is that it refers to a period of time between the fall of the Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire, and the beginning of the Italian Renaissance and the Age of Discovery. So it's that period between the fall of the Roman Empire and the Italian Renaissance. We also sometimes call this the Middle Age. meaning the middle, right in between what was the classical period, Greece and Rome, and the Renaissance, which is this rebirth of learning and knowledge, and we'll get to the Renaissance. There's also a third name for this period, sometimes called the medieval period. This is just to make it as confusing as possible. We have the Dark Ages, we have the Middle Ages, we have the medieval period. They all mean basically the same thing, and it's important that we know that. So pop quiz. There are 3 names. What are they? Ding, ding, ding. You got the first one right. That was Dark Ages. This was the easy one. I'm going to be using the phrase Dark Ages most of the time throughout this unit. So I'm glad you got that one. Second one. Aha, the middle, because they're in the middle. Middle Ages because they're in the middle of the Renaissance on one end and the Classical Age on the other. And the final one, the tricky one, medieval period. Again, we have that just to be confusing with 3 names for the same thing. So, the Dark Ages. Were they really dark? The Dark Ages refer to this loss of knowledge, this decline of civilization, that we enter into a period of time where less is known than we knew before. It's like all these new advancements that we have today, iPhones and the internet and so on. Let's imagine that they disappear for a period of 500 years. We would consider that to be a big step back. Okay, that's what's going on here. A lot of stuff that they knew how to do, they knew how to build these big palaces, these big statues. All that knowledge is gone. But it's important to know that this is really only an accurate description of Europe during the time. The whole world was not in a dark age. So while Europeans didn't know how to do these things that they could once do, the rest of the world, they remember. In fact, Arabia and China, 2 areas that we're going to be talking about later in the year, were thriving during this European Dark Age. So be very careful when we're talking about the Dark Ages. Make sure that you remember that it's only talking about Europe as being in this Dark Age. The rest of the world doing just fine. Alright, so we've got an exit ticket for you to do. Make sure that you check that out, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye now.